No, these are not regular relationship problems. Regular relationship problems do not leave people feeling as though their reality and identity were stolen, full of staggering self doubt, feeling the need to appease their abuser. That is not a regular relationship problem. So let's begin with a dynamic that's probably never healthy, but let's break it down, which is insults. This is an easy one to begin with. Most of you are like, yeah, insults don't seem like a healthy part of a relationship, because by and large, healthy relationships do not involve insults per se. Insults can be anything from a diminishment of someone's abilities, telling someone, yeah, you're a lousy cook, you're a terrible provider, you're the worst present wrapper I've ever seen, whatever an insult would be. You might insult someone as a person. You're the worst. I can't believe I have to be seen with you. I can do better than you. Insults could be about a person's appearance, a person's preferences. The list goes on and on. I'm not talking, an insult here is what I'm not talking about good-natured ribbing, like fun jabs at silly foibles ranging from, I don't know, bathroom habits like passing gas to putting strange condiments on food. We know the difference. An insult has edge, it has a sneer, it has contempt. An insult is intended to harm. An insult, here I'm talking about devaluation, dehumanization, making someone feel less than. It doesn't feel funny. You don't want to laugh. It leaves you feeling angry, hurt, not enough, and unsafe. That's insult. And insults, frankly, are the love language of the narcissistic relationship. It's about the narcissistic need to dominate, coupled with the contempt that narcissistic people feel for the people that they need. So by insulting them, it limits any kind of intimacy and any kind of vulnerability, and it also allows the narcissistic person to maintain control, power, and dominance. Now, in a healthy relationship, insults aren't a thing. Good-natured ribbing, for sure. But those little good-natured, playful jabs, those work because a healthy relationship is a safe place. I will say the people closest to me joke about how I think ginger ale and a soak in the bathtub are apparently the cure for everything, and that a grown woman of 55 years of age should not be carrying a backpack and calling it a purse. And I joke with the people who are very close and dear to me how they need to stop watching Lifetime movies and considering a Lifetime movie to be a documentary. And those of you I'm talking about in my life, you know who you are. And we talk about it and we know it makes us smile and laugh and we don't feel hurt. Many times people in narcissistic relationships who face down contemptuous, bleak insults. And that can be coupled with other abusive language like name-calling or lots of abusive use of obscenities. Those folks will try to soft pedal and say, oh, now we only hurt the ones we love. No, we don't. Or people caught in these relationships will say, that's just us being comfortable. In a relationship, you should be able to say anything. Not so sure about that. Over a lifetime of hearing insults, when that happens, it sort of seeps into our emotional DNA and it transforms us. We become more accustomed to hearing them. We may even shape our identity around them and just accept those insults as a way that people interact with us. People who had narcissistic parents will say that a lifetime of insults set them up to end up choosing narcissistic partners or to believe in the insults they hear or stay in jobs in which insults and abuse are part of the workplace culture. Insults are insults, and they are not observed in healthy relationships. In healthy relationships, we may have soft-hearted jokes, and we may notice and comment and giggle about the foibles of the person we love, with the built-in knowledge that we love these people, we keep them safe, regardless of their flatulence, their condiment choices, their ginger ale, their snoring, their TV choices, and their kitchen skills. But if we were ever told it hurt them, we would stop immediately. Insults are psychological daggers. They hurt, and when we hear them, we feel a lump in our throats. If they are happening, it isn't healthy. Insults are not just words, but insults can also include the tone of our voice when we speak to someone, our body language, frequent use of obscenities, and going after vulnerabilities. For example, a person's weight, their appearance, or other sensitivities they may have. All of these are in the realm of the insult, and not the good-natured and affectionate banter. When someone does and says these things, and then tries to soft pedal it, honestly, I think that that's gaslighting. Contempt is the death of a relationship. The research of John Gottman has consistently shown that, and insults are a primary means of communicating that contempt. And if you feel you have to stay in a relationship characterized by insults, always remember, don't justify those insults to yourself or rationalize them. As I've always told you, force yourself into the and. For example, I am in a relationship with a person and they regularly insult me. Why do I want you to do that? Because it creates a personal accountability for you and keeps you from falling too far down the cognitive dissonance well. Again, I'm never here to tell any of you to leave a relationship or stay in a relationship. I'm here to tell you what the geography is and give you the tools you need to navigate it. But to recognize that if insults are happening, it's never okay. Like I said, force yourself into the and. I'm in a relationship and I'm insulted. From there on in, you decide how you want to proceed. Stay in it, leave in it, set boundaries, but just don't justify it. It's important when you've been in an unhealthy relationship for so long to understand what a healthy one looks like. And a lot of people say, I don't know that I've ever seen one. And that's my hope in these series of videos, is to say, this is what happens in unhealthy narcissistic relationships. And one thing that keeps up happening in these relationships is they keep bringing up your failures and disappointments. Now, being in a narcissistic relationship is like living in a museum of grievances and portraits of all the mistakes you have ever made, because you are never allowed to forget them. They are always flashed in front of your face. You get reminded about them repeatedly, and they are used in arguments all of the time. What is interesting is that a narcissistic person, usually a partner, but it can also be any other significant person in your life, will seem like they have a terrible memory for things that matter to you. They will forget that you told them that you have to work late on Wednesday, or that you can't pick up the kids on a given day, or that there's a family birthday event that weekend, or that your sister is sick. They will forget those things. They'll say things like, I don't remember you telling me that, despite you telling them, texting them, even giving them a calendar invite. But they will manage to remind you of something that you did not do right or say right years ago. Narcissistic people's memories are just fine. They just use it to hold information that upholds their victimized vision of the world, rather than anything that fosters closeness with other people. If you have ever, and you will, because it's a human relationship, it happens, if you've ever wronged someone in an unhealthy or narcissistic relationship or let them down, they will remember it to their dying day and will remind you of it until that day as well. It's a phenomenon that really plays into the eggshell walking that unhealthy relationships require. You will often live in fear. Are they going to bring this up? Are they going to bring that up? Inevitably, they always do. You may be having a disagreement about something completely unrelated to the bad thing you did years ago, and they will still bring it around to your failings. A common gambit in unhealthy relationships is that perhaps you are discussing their chronic lateness to events where it matters. For example, being late to very important doctor's appointments or teacher conferences or school things or the airport. And you may have brought it up because this time their lateness had some real meaningful ramifications. they will then turn that around and bring it to, oh, so you're preaching to me about how I disrespect your time? I can clearly remember when you stayed out late with your friends and did not tell me, and then I saw it on social media the next day. Oh, and that event happened 8 years ago. Before you know it, you are now defending a night out 8 years ago before you were married that is completely irrelevant to the message that their chronic lateness is actually having some real impacts on the family or on the relationship. Ultimately, the issue of their sloppiness with time never gets addressed, and after a while, you are so exhausted at having that one night brought up after all these years repeatedly, and it lessens the likelihood that you will attempt to address the situation at hand, simply fostering a sense of helplessness. In narcissistic and unhealthy relationships, difficult people store up the bad things you did like evidence to be marched into a court of law. They march it out whenever they need to shut down a conversation, deflect it, and make it impossible to talk about anything current because you are forever paying for the sins of the past. As a contrast, you may be wondering, well, if that's what happens in the unhealthy relationships, what happens in the healthy ones? Well, that's a little complicated too. We human beings do, in fact, have memories. And if someone in a relationship with us has conducted themselves poorly, we don't just forget that. That's not how memory works. We remember, and maybe that leads to us having different expectations. Maybe we take note that they have changed their behavior since that event, or you've changed your behavior since that event. Maybe we see it within a context, and maybe we forgive, let it go, and move forward. But it is not the repetitive, toxic cycle of the narcissistic relationship where the bad behavior persists in perpetuity. And if you bring it up, you get hit with your sins of the past. In a healthy relationship, people do not weaponize the sins of the past. Maybe they are informed by them. And if they were that damning, they may even call the relationship quits. But they will not melt those transgressions down into weapons to harm another person. Because that really is what a narcissistic relationship or any unhealthy relationship is. A cargo hold full of grievances about the past, grievances about the bad things that each person has done, an endurance test, an eternal game of gotcha. Now you're the one who's wrong. In healthy relationships, there's what we call sort of fault tolerance that's built in. The idea that mistakes are made, none of us are perfect. We have the capacity to talk about it, make amends, be vulnerable, take ownership, and attempt to address it, learn from it, and move forward, but also commit to not bringing up the past as something to punish someone with. The past matters insofar as it is a catalog of what has happened that we can learn from. If something keeps happening over and over again, and the same difficult cycle is not changing no matter how we communicate about it, we have the choice to look at this pattern and either leave or stay and recognize that this is the reality of the situation. But to use that past as a way to punish and control, that never works on either side and is a real signature characteristic of an unhealthy relationship. So if you feel that your past errors, whether large or small, are trotted out regularly as a way to keep you in check, or that you do the same to someone else, take a long, hard look at this dynamic. It is, again, a hallmark classical sign of an unhealthy relationship. Relationships are not meant to feel like legal proceedings, although many narcissistic relationships feel that way. Healthy relationships are flexible, open, dynamic, communicative, and have margin for error. Margin for error cannot be a one-way street. The narcissistic person is never held accountable, and everyone else is held to a punitive standard. That imbalance doesn't work. I hope that gives you some clarity on what that looks like in a healthy versus an unhealthy relationship. So I'd love to know, and you can drop this one in the comments. How many of people, when you were talking about a narcissistic relationship of any kind, would say, oh, that just sounds like regular relationship problems. Like, what are you calling it? Narcissistic abuse? Really? You need that name? It sounds like regular relationship problems to me. Drop that in the chat if you've ever heard anyone say that, and I'm going to break that down for you. So this idea that people come up and just say it's regular relationship problems, someone came up to me recently and sort of brought this topic up. Someone came up to me and asked me the other day, I said, come on, Ramani, what is this narcissistic abuse stuff you talk about? What's the difference between this and just regular relationship stuff? You know, like when people are going through stuff, they do the stuff that you talk about, that you call narcissistic abuse. They criticize each other, right? And they devalue each other. Sounds like relationships problems I've had. It sounds like a garden variety relationship problems to us. Are you just trying to put a different label on it, Ramani, and sell it differently and call it narcissistic abuse? You can imagine how angry I was getting in this conversation. I just really wanted to wipe the smug look off this person's face. I slowly and calmly explained it to them. I don't know if they were listening, but I actually recognized it was more important for me to talk about this issue in this space because, like I said, I'm guessing that many of you may have come up against this kind of critique, maybe even in the therapist's office, but certainly amongst people you know. And a major issue is that not only in the media or around your family dinner table or amongst friends, but also even in the field of mental health, is that narcissistic abuse, especially when it is characterized by, and I'm going to say only, and I don't mean only, but only psychological and emotional abuse, is often considered just another word for regular relationship problems. It's not. Let's talk about regular relationship problems first, okay? What does that mean? Well, as I see it, when there are two reasonably healthy people in a relationship, neither one of them is antagonistic or manipulative or callous or mean, but the people are capable of empathy and respect and self-awareness. And those folks have relationship problems. Those may relate to things like differences around money, time, values, opinions. There may even be issues around betrayal, deceit, honesty, and openness. They may argue about household chores. They may just drift apart. It happens. Practical issues may arise, like distance, or far more painful ones, like the stress engendered by illness, the death of a child, or issues like fertility issues. In these regular relationship problems, I know people aren't always graceful. They may say or do hurtful things. They may insult each other. They may stonewall or slam doors or feel unheard. They may feel the relationship is inequitable and resent having to do the lion's share of the housework or childcare, or be angry at a partner who chooses to spend more time with friends than with them. I'm not saying regular relationship problems are pretty. They're not always. And all of these things I just talked about can happen in narcissistic relationships too, right? But with a big difference. And that big difference is the backdrop. In regular relationship problems, when things were going well before the problems came up, they kind of went normally, consistently, with empathy, kindness, respect, no gaslighting, no manipulation, no shame and rage spirals, no need to walk on eggshells. In the regular relationships, you were able to just be you, and you didn't doubt your reality or feel insane or wonder if you were good enough. And you wouldn't alternate between idealization and invalidation. The relationship was good. There was a shift, and you either fixed it or you didn't, but you didn't feel like your brain had been hijacked. In some regular relationship problems, people are able to work it out in a real way and move forward into a healthier next phase, having learned new ways to communicate or problem solve, or maybe both sides get therapy and they really individually do the work. In some, they are not. The rifts may be too deep, the difference is too vast, the bells cannot be unrung, and so people part ways, but often in a more resolved way, not confused, but with the expectable sadness and grief at having to say goodbye and let go of a part of their lives, not in this sort of messy, hoovery, what the hell just happened way. In the narcissistic relationship, even during the so-called good days, from a relatively early point, your reality and sense of self are tested all the time. You are chronically confused. You feel helpless to change the relationship. Nothing you do seems to make things better. Your feedback is met with rage. You have to cut off more and more parts of yourself to make it work. And you have to walk on eggshells to survive. And all of this is happening on a regular day in the relationship. In this relationship, in a narcissistic relationship, you may transform from a regular person into a deeply anxious, sad, or apathetic one. You may lie awake at night and ruminate about the relationship all the time. You will be convinced that you are the one with the problem because there are just enough good days to keep you on the hook and to leave you doubting yourself. But you wake up and do not know what you're going to get on any given day. You lose yourself. And that is the case, whether it's a good day or a bad day in a narcissistic relationship. When it comes to conflict in these relationships, you can't win. The gaslighting confuses the arguments so badly that you either choose to stop having them and just give in, or they become more and more explosive, perhaps even dangerous. So no, these are not regular relationship problems. Regular relationship problems do not leave people feeling as though their reality and identity were stolen, full of staggering self-doubt, feeling the need to appease their abuser. That is not a regular relationship problem. And that right there is a problem, folks. Lots of people out there want to view narcissistic abuse as just the stuff that happens in any relationship. Not the case. On a normal day in a narcissistic relationship, on a normal day, you're living in confusion and fear and anxiety and helplessness and holding on for dear life to the good and normal stuff that is happening that day, because you know it is a matter of time before it slips away and you are going to be invalidated again. On a bad day in a narcissistic relationship, you may feel as though you are in a constant state of panic. You're so clear on what you need to do, like ending it or setting a permanent boundary, but frozen when you think about having to do it. You may have gone from confident and productive to self-devaluing and no longer motivated. These are not regular relationship problems. In regular relationship problems, we may be stressed and distracted, but we do not lose our sense of self. We do not lose our sense of competence. We do not lose our sense of power. We do not lose ourselves. There is a real danger to people viewing narcissistic abuse as just being regular relationship problems. It's anything but. But when narcissistic abuse is viewed that way, then the usual tired, I suppose tried and true, but tired relationship training, communication work, date nights, stress management, financial management, division of emotional and practical labor, recalibrating things like mindfulness and empathy, or practicing gratitude in the relationship. That's all the stuff that we do. Things like asking the two people in the relationship, reflect on what you like about each other. That's what therapists and other people will try with regular relationship problems. Now, not only will this not improve the narcissistic relationship, it will often make it worse because it will embolden the narcissist. Because now you are fanning the flames of the narcissist because they are just sitting there, how grateful you are, and will turn around and hit you over the head over you all the grateful things you said later on. And the gaslighting, manipulation, and emotional abuse will not get addressed and might simply get filed under communication problems. I don't think so. Listen, these are not arguments about, well, we can't afford to eat out as much, or do we really need a new dishwasher, or I wish you'd put the kids to bed more. Now, don't get me wrong, those issues may and probably would come up in a narcissistic relationship. But if you brought that stuff up to a narcissist, you'll be met with rage and the other people kind of giving in. Narcissistic relationships are a slow bleeding away of you, of your identity, of your sense of safety in the world, of your aspiration, of your joys, pleasures, and happiness. And because of that, many therapists will often focus on the problems or pathology of the person experiencing the narcissistic abuse instead of educating them about patterns like narcissism in the other person or people. They will try to address the anxiety and the unhappiness of the survivor of narcissistic abuse without ever saying that anyone living with or interacting with or working with a person with this kind of personality style would be experiencing exactly what you're experiencing. Then there's a risk of further self-blame when the person experiencing the narcissistic abuse becomes the identified patient. And then people jump on that and saying, well, it's because they're anxious. So when you get hit with, oh, all relationships are hard, or this just sounds like regular relationship stuff, toss them this video. Oh, I would love to live a day. I really would love to live a day in the life of someone who is able to be so cavalier about narcissists and the damage that they do. I would love to be able to walk around and think life is fair and relationships are always fixable and the nice people get ahead and everyone gets along. It almost sounds like a theme park to me. It's a fair world after all, where it always works out. It doesn't. And especially for people who are enduring any kind of narcissistic relationship, who have to endure the sense that they aren't working hard enough at it and making too big a deal out of regular relationship stuff, it can be extremely painful. So when someone tries to talk about those regular relationship problems, not so much. This is an entirely different beast. Let's take on this question. Drop the answers in the comments too. What does a normal relationship look like? This is a little bit of a trick question. I'll tell you why in a minute. But what does a normal relationship look like? So my answer to this is a tough question to answer because there is clearly a wide range of normal. But there are some essential ingredients, okay? Now, in a minute, I'll get to what a healthy relationship is. But let's start with normal, because there is a difference, okay? In a normal relationship, there may be some disagreements or maybe even pretty noisy arguments from time to time. But ultimately, there will be the capacity to hold space for the other person's point of view, come to a compromise, and to do so without doing a character assassination of the other person. In a normal relationship, people may sometimes get tempted by other people from time to time, even if it's just for a minute, or even just have a daydreamy moment about another person. Maybe seated next to someone on a train or a bus or an airplane, or someone you run into regularly at a coffee shop, or someone you work with. But ultimately, there is the capacity to set boundaries and not get pulled into an inappropriate relationship, either electronically or in person, out of respect for your existing relationship, the person you are in it with, and for yourself. In a normal relationship, people get angry and in fact may get really, really pissed off. But that anger doesn't escalate into frightening rage and dysregulation and terrifying anger. People in normal relationships who experience a lot of anger at a given moment may walk it off, or exercise it off, or find a way to get past it, even if that just means a few hours by themselves. In a normal relationship, people may get annoyed at the other person. It may be about towels on the floor, toilet seats that aren't put down, how the dishwasher gets emptied, snoring, belching, talking too loudly, and can give feedback about that. And there's some good faith attempt by that toilet seat transgressor at addressing the annoyances, and no rage in the face of the annoyances or hearing about the annoyances. In a normal relationship, people may sometimes tell a white lie. I liked what you cooked. You look good in that hat. Your friend's wife seems like a really nice person. Just to keep the damn trains running, but not the technicolored lies that are a problem. I went to the gym after work when they didn't. I deposited the check when they didn't. And there could be some problems because those lies may go quite deep. In a normal relationship, sometimes people aren't interested in the same things. They may not like watching the subtitled period piece TV shows you like. They may not like watching Monday Night Football. You may not like fly fishing. They may not like eating foods you like, so you find compromises. Maybe you watch that show they aren't watching with you. You support them going on trips with friends to do the things that they enjoy. But you don't criticize their interests in a normal relationship, and they don't attack yours or shame them. In a normal relationship, there may be times you or they aren't in the mood for sex, and your partner respects that, but you still have a healthy dialogue about it. You don't just sweep it under the rug. Maybe you snuggle, but you don't say, yo, you aren't having sex with me, so I decided to go find it somewhere else. In a normal relationship, you sometimes daydream about what it would be like to be single or live a different life than the one in the relationship. Trust me, the other person's doing that too sometimes. Not all the time, but something may set you off on that thought loop. Mental exploration isn't betrayal. Acting on it or calling the other person in the relationship out for stopping them from living the life they want, that's not so okay. I'm sharing all of this about normal relationships because I have talked about healthy relationships before, characterized by respect, kindness, self-awareness, compassion, empathy, shared values, growth, companionship. Healthy relationships are comprised of healthy ingredients, a sort of gold standard, and some people out there are lucky enough to be in them. A narcissistic relationship can never be healthy. It's missing the fundamental list of everything that makes a narcissistic relationship. A normal relationship has that healthy stuff, but because life happens, sometimes it gets buried, like you'd see like in a messy garage or closet. The stuff's in there. It's not always easy to find when things are really disorganized or not completely smooth. But are all normal relationships healthy? Let me, as I do, use a food analogy. A really healthy meal may be a lean protein, veggies, complex carbohydrates, minimal added sugar, balanced levels of sodium, few saturated fats, like a whole salmon, quinoa, steamed vegetables, small bit of fruit for dessert situation. A normal meal may have some potatoes with a little butter on the side, maybe a piece of pie for dessert, a little bit of extra salt. Healthy enough, but not perfect, because that's life. If we bring the narcissistic relationship into that meal metaphor, we're kind of talking about a supersized fast food meal with a milkshake and a sugary soda and dessert and a bag of chips and a bunch of processed sugar and a big piece of cake and pie. Keep eating like that and it will kill you. When people set out the standard of healthy relationships, just like with that healthy meal, I know that many people roll their eyes and think, please. And then they may give up on the plot. They're like, I ain't got that. But the normal relationship, that's a different beast. Normal relationships mean that you have the messiness of life. Toilet seats that are sometimes in the wrong position. Watching some of your TV shows alone. Sometimes wondering for a second if you should have stayed single. Maybe having a little bit of a fantasy about the cute person at the gym. But none of it cuts away at the fundamental decency of your relationship. Maybe sometimes your partner will snuggle and fall asleep with you as you watch the period piece subtitled drama. Or after that friends weekend, when you come back, you find something soothingly familiar about their snoring. The normal relationship is our saggy bits, our broadening waistlines, the wrinkles on our face. It's the normal stuff. Unfortunately, social media either shows grandiose, love-bombed, perfect, kind of distorted fantasy relationships, or people proclaiming their over-the-top joy, I love them so much, relationship goals nonsense. We don't tend to see so many social media posts and pictures of towels on the floor or the argument you had about how to set the thermostat. The normal relationship is different from the narcissistic relationship in some key ways. There is room and space for both people's reality and experience. You may not like watching football on Sundays, and you can say that. And they may not want to spend Sundays helping you out with certain errands because they are watching that football game, and you can accept that and just move on. There is a regulation of emotion in a normal relationship. Even when there's anger, it's not slamming doors and yelling and horrible rage and menace, but maybe I think I need to take a little walk, or give me a minute, and you let each other calm down. In a normal relationship, there's at least a real attempt at avoiding shaming the other, avoiding gaslighting. But rather you try things like, I don't agree with you, but you're you and I'm me and it's all okay. Instead of saying something like, only a loser would like that restaurant, or, ugh, why don't you look like the cute guy at the gym? You feel your reality in a normal relationship is seen. Maybe it's not always appreciated. I think that for survivors of narcissistic relationships, this is an important distinction, because people coming out of a narcissistic relationship are always trying to figure out what's normal, or even what does normal look like once you get out of the narcissistic relationship. A lot of us are told what a healthy relationship looks like. I'm guilty of that on the channel. That's why I made this video. Because of that, we don't always get to hear what a normal relationship looks like, the stuff that never gets posted on social media. Listen, I am sure it would be a hoot to be in a relationship where you're with your best friend, having great sex regularly, and you love the same things, and you want the same things, and you praise each other all the time, and you both honor each other's rhythms, and nobody snores, and the toilet seat is always where you want it. Yay for you if you have that. The respect and compassion and kindness and empathy, they may not always be on central display in a garden variety normal relationship, but you know they're there. They may come out at little moments when someone affectionately rolls their eyes as they come in and see one more show about people who live in a castle, but they still give you a kiss and tell you, enjoy it. Or they chuckle when you leave a note on top of the dirty towels on the floor, and they don't rage at you. After a narcissistic relationship, a normal relationship can feel like coming home to a dream. Just keep it real and don't get panicky about the disagreements or the stuff of life. We can get overly sensitized to disagreements after we go through a toxic relationship. It's not the disagreements and the foibles that are the problem. It's about how they are handled. So, hear, hear, all hail the normal relationship. Thanks again.